Lock your corridor, call the coroner. You conjured us up, the drama's over, we're back. The Triumvirate is about to once again launch you off here. These are the first of many series of information security talks from 3 CISSPs who are currently working in the information security industry. Welcome to the Triumvirate Talks. You think of him every time you reach for your coffee. I introduce Triumvirate Prabh Nair. We also have someone who remains in our memory palace just by being who he is. I introduce Triumvirate Prashant Mohan. My name is Luke Ahmed, network security engineer by day and CISSP instructor by night. Gentlemen, it is good to be back with you. We haven't done something like this since 2021. It's been too long.
Yeah, actually, it's been a long, and I'm sure, something has happened for some reasons, right? I believe Prashant and Luke. So we are here for that only, and it's all about giving back to the society what we have learned, what we have seen, what is experience. And I personally feel this session is not about any certification prep. This basically give the visibility to the people, I believe, that how things actually work in the industry. And glad, Luke, you have taken this initiative with the support of Prashant, and we coming up with some kind of things which can be a great useful for the aspirants who want to know actually things how it works in the organization.
It's so good to be back. Good to be back with a bang, which I should say, and glad to share the stage with the legends like Prabh and Luke. So happy to inculcate all these real life experiences, some of the talks that we normally hear in our day-to-day life, and let's hear it out how we can incorporate or map it with the theoretical world with the practical life.
I am always about forward progress, and to do it with you two professionals, I mean, the momentum's going to be unstoppable. Look, the three of us are most known for our work in the security industry revolving around certifications. CISSP, CCSP, CC, CRIC, like my report card in high school, a lot of C's. For our Triumvirate Talks, we will touch on the topics you find in your certification books, but as Triumvirate Prabh says, this isn't an exam study session or discussion. We're going to pivot away from the usual discussions and talk about how we use the very things we study and learn about in our own real life experience, how we have applied everything we've learned to the real life job with real life consequences. For this episode, the Triumvirate has decided to focus on the topic of BCP DRP, otherwise known as business continuity planning and disaster recovery planning. I'll share a specific experience from my professional job as a network security engineer. Prashant will share his experience about BCP DRP from his role as security architect, and Triumvirate Prabh will close with his vast experience as governance, risk, and compliance. What you, the audience, will hopefully get out of this talk is nothing that you will read in any academia, because it is based all on our own personal experience. Nobody should be writing about this anyway. And through it, we hope you get a better understanding of what you're studying from 3 different real-life perspectives. Okay, I will start off, followed by Prashant, and then Prabh himself. Gentlemen, are we ready to go?
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. I have been a network security engineer specializing in firewalls for about 8 years now. If you watch my videos, if you know anything about me, I hold 2 jobs. My favorite one is CISSP instructor, although it's a delicate balance. BCP DRP at my professional job is a daily, if not hourly, component of my job. Terms such as high availability, failover, fault tolerance, system resiliency, and the general concept of availability are part of my everyday professional lexicon. And I remember a time there was, I'm trying to think of which story to say, and I think if we go with this one, it would be the most effective because it combines both technical and high level. We usually add 3 servers to our client environment. Okay, I work for a security operations center, managed service provider. We take in clients and we add servers and firewalls. These 3 servers were protected by a pair of checkpoint firewalls, both in high availability mode using VRRP, otherwise known as Virtual Redundancy Routing Protocol. And every time we add 3 servers, we have a process. We have onboarding procedures to follow. The first one would be the servers must undergo system hardening by the server team. The load balancer must be configured for the software-defined networking by the load balancer team. And the HA pair of firewalls, they must have proper static routes and failover capabilities to reach the new backend servers. Okay, we did all that. We finished all that. We followed all the onboarding procedures. All 3 teams completed their task throughout the week, Monday through Thursday. We all communicated with each other, opened troubleshooting tickets if necessary, and got on Teams and Zoom calls to make sure all test traffic can come in from the internet, get routed through the firewall, hit the load balancer, go through the round robin algorithm on the load balancer, and reach all 3 servers. By Thursday, all tests were successful. Everything was good. And we're supposed to put these servers live on Monday morning. It's always a rush. And the only thing left now was the usual part of the onboarding procedure, the BCP DRP drill on Friday night. Or I'm sorry, rather early Saturday morning at 2 a.m. BCP DRP was our last step, in which all 3 devices would be failed over one after another to make sure traffic is still reaching the servers as expected. Because if you come Monday morning, everything could be working fine. But if there's just a slight glitch or a slight disaster incident, we're going to have to start all over. So we're trying to make sure that doesn't happen. For the firewalls, we would test high availability. For the load balancer, we would test resiliency. And for the servers, we'd test fault tolerance of the RAID 5 disks. And I'll go over examples of exactly how we did all those. So come 1:30 in the morning, my colleague and I, both of us, by the way, loved attending these BCP DRP tests in the middle of the night because you just don't get hands-on experience like that during the day. We would jump into any opportunity where we could learn something technical that nobody else gets to do and nobody else learns. So we selfishly know all that knowledge. And of course, we do BCP DRP maintenance at late at night when there's the least amount of users, so therefore the least impact to business functions. So now it was 1:45 a.m. The firewall team was ready. The load balancer team was ready. Server team all ready. And the BCP DRP coordinator said it was time to begin testing. And it would start with the firewall team, meaning it's showtime for me and my colleague. We logged into checkpoint 2200 firewalls, specifically the VRRP configuration. These were old school checkpoints from what I remember too. You couldn't just hit a button and have the primary firewall fail over to the secondary. You had to go through this manual process of going to each interface on the firewall, on the secondary firewall, and changing what's called a priority number. So if the active firewall the one that's taking traffic, has to have a higher priority number than the passive firewall. So right now, for example, the primary firewall, the active one, would have a priority of 100. And the secondary, the one that's not active but ready to take over, would have a firewall priority of 90. And there were 5 interfaces. And let me tell you, this was always a nervous time because while everything was supposed to be configured correctly in the firewall, something always just goes wrong with VRRP failovers. I don't know why, but just never always works perfectly. But luckily it did this time because all we did as a firewall team was go to the secondary and raise the priority to 110. So as soon as you raise the priority to 110, both firewall was the primary was like, oh, my priority is 100, the secondary is 110, I got a failover. And the secondary is like, oh, I'm 110 and the other one's 100. Oh no, I'm the active firewall now. I better be getting ready for failover and get ready for that traffic. We hit save on the firewall after raising the priority, and 30 agonizing seconds later, the checkpoint guy interface was successfully failed over. The primary firewall was now the passive firewall, and the secondary firewall was now the active firewall. High availability worked. That was the definition of high availability. Firewall team's BCP DRP drill is now done. We showed the high availability of the firewall worked and would work the same way in a real-life BCP DRP situation. If the primary interfaces went down, the secondary would automatically raise their priority and take the traffic. Now it was the load balancers team to do their thing. And what they do is turn off the nodes configured in the load balancer software. I think it was like an F5 load balancer. I mean, what load balancer isn't an F5 these days, really? A node is a logical IP address, by the way, that maps to one of the physical servers added in the load balancing pool. And if you've worked with load balancer, all these words are load balancer terms: pool, nodes, logical, all that. And what they did was turn off the nodes to make it seem like they were offline. The point of this testing was to see what would happen if a logical node suddenly went offline or there was a misconfiguration. For our environment, for our network architecture, what was supposed to happen in case of this incident, the load balancer was no longer supposed to act like a load balancer, and traffic was supposed to go straight from the firewall to one of the servers, to server 1 out of the 3 servers. traffic would pass through the load balancer or bypass the load balancer. By the way, these are not physical devices. This was all located in the cloud. So it was easier to configure the network and VM settings to do certain functions via APIs and other secret configurations I don't want to get into. So far, we failed over the firewall successfully. Okay, part of the BCP DRP. Network traffic is now passing through the secondary. And then we turned off the nodes in the load balancer, and we saw traffic pass through the load balancer. There was no load balancing going on. There was no round robin algorithm. Nothing was going through there was no load balancer functions. Everything just went to server 3. Now, server 3's turn, or the server team's turn. Now, take note for the firewall load balancer team, we did what we study in our books, known as a parallel test. We had our networking components in a different network that would mimic the original network. But for the server team, they didn't really want to shut down the servers or pull the plug on the fiber optic cable or anything like that, because they were just testing the RAID. All they did was a simulation test, a tabletop exercise. All they did was pretend a hard drive failed. Because you can't really fail a hard drive in a test or maintenance window. You can't purposely fail a hard drive. You try to convince anyone in a company of doing that, I dare you. No manager is going to agree to that ever. So they pretended to fail the hard drive and followed the process. Then they looked at their RAID software, made sure all disks were striping and used the right parity bits and acting like it's supposed to, and confirmed back to the rest of us that it was done. This was a simulation test. They simulated what would happen and then followed the steps they would take to recover the RAID. Oh, remember though, RAID is not a backup solution. It's a recovery method. There's a difference. Okay, it was a successful night. We performed high availability testing by failing over the firewalls. We tested the load balancer resiliency to make sure if there was a configuration change, the whole load balancer didn't act weird or strange or mess up the network. And with the server team, we pretended what would happen if we lost a hard disk. Now, remember on the call, we aren't mentioning any of these terms. These are not, this is real life. These aren't just, we're not using book terms. We're not saying, oh, begin the parallel test. I guess we better do a simulation test now. We're just talking about technical stuff. We're saying things like, is the VERP working? Are you shutting off the interfaces? What's the flow of traffic? Do you see a complete TCP handshake between the firewall and the server team? These are the words being used. Nobody's ever saying parallel test or simulation test, or even the acronym BCP DRP. There's no mention of BCP DRP, even though the email invite said this was a BCP DRP test. Simple BCP DRP test string drill at my job, which has multiple elements of what we study in our books. The importance being that we would rather know, even at a minimal level, even at a partial pretend level, what to expect and what to do during a disaster scenario, instead of having to guess or go into a state of panic when a real disaster incident occurs. Triumvirate Prashant, over to you.
Thanks. Thank you, Luke, for this exhilarating experience. And whenever I hear this story about the networks and the people do the things when something is not working perfectly fine, because the communication, I personally say, it's the backbone for any organization. The network, the infrastructure, the communication link, they all are the backbone. If one thing goes down or the communication links are not working, you're completely isolated from the rest of the world. Well, my experience isn't as exhilarating as yours, but certainly I believe the rest of the world would be able to relate more closely based on what I experienced, not specifically with the organization that I'm working, but in one of the organizations that I know they did around the pandemic, when pandemic was about to get started early in 2020. It was, people were worried, people were concerned, and definitely that was well taken. But one of the major concerns were, what if we have to shut down our offices? What if we have to shut down everything? How exactly we're gonna work from home? Are we prepared for that? And you did mention, Luke, about different kind of a test, parallel, simulation, tabletop. But one of the tests is something that the management is most reluctant about. That's your full interruption test. You speak about that, hey, we're going to shut down everything today just because we want to see if our DR servers are working perfectly fine or not. And in case if the test doesn't work as expected, probably mean we might end up losing some of our operational hours. We might end up causing some of the losses, right? So that is one of the things where it's absolutely and extremely hard to convince any management that would you want to go ahead with a full interruption test. I know this organization, they did it. It was really difficult at one point of time because in India, when the different organizations were shutting down their workforce, they all were being asked to work from home. Way before that, when the country went on lockdown, there was an organization I know, they decided to do a full interruption test just to be doubly sure. Are they prepared in case? Because there were regions in Europe, in US, and other geographical regions they were locking down the nation. And India was still operational. There were a lot of organizations who were still functioning, and they wanted to seek an opportunity in case if we decide to lock down, if everybody starts to work from home, are we prepared for that? So what they did 10 days before when the country officially went to lockdown, they asked every employee to work from home just to see, are we prepared? And what happened, we started getting out a lot of troubles and problems. The organization started figuring out, well, when people are working from home, they are connecting through VPN. And the VPN concentrators, the VPN servers, aren't capable enough to take up a load or the stress for so much workforce. Every endpoints are now connecting or hitting to the VPN servers. Now, because this kind of a catastrophic thing never happened, no one was prepared for the disaster of this magnitude. No one was ever ready or ever prepared for something like this will happen, where every single associate, every single workforce will be asked to work from home. And what happened, it required people in the organization to restructure, re-engineer, re-architecture everything. Things which weren't very necessary to be connected through VPN, they thought of putting into a different network domain. They also restructuring various system servers where can we put it on the intranet? Can we put it on the DMZ? Can we have it accessible through our maybe components like your Zscaler or other technologies in place? This actually gave us a confidence that in case, and it took time, almost a week time to have a capability created, have things documented, that in case if the country ever decide to go on lockdown, if everybody is supposed to work from home, I think we have a resilient plan. I think we have a robust plan in place that will allow us to continue to work from home, even if it is 100% of the population. That was on one location. That also led, because the organization I'm talking about, it is geographically dispersed. It has geographical presence in many locations, and that gave a heads up and a plan that they could replicate in their own respective organizations as well, own respective locations as well. So that is where they decided to transition. It was definitely not a very smooth or seamless, but definitely with a little bit of hiccups, a little bit of obstructions. They did manage to complete a full interruption test and showcase the actual loopholes, actual drawbacks that they had in plans, and how exactly we can overcome those. So after 10 days, when the country decided to go on lockdown, the entire transitioning were very smooth. People had everything in plans, every plan in place. They documented every procedures. And like what we read in theory, that no matter whenever the disaster happens, because when country goes on lockdown, that's the biggest disaster, that where it is not affecting any kind of a workforce, it's not affecting any kind of a servers or systems, but it is affecting the presence of people to come on board, and then they start taking, they are working through a particular network domain. Now everybody's supposed to connect to a network connection through VPN or through remote, and they had a complete plan in place that would enable them to do it in a streamlined manner. It also let the organization to work towards, because if no one is at the server rooms, how exactly are we going to take care of in case something goes down? So making sure that those SNMP consoles are working up and running, they are accurately populating the data for every resource utilizations, and so that just in case something goes wrong, they have enough time for someone to be around and they can take care of the systems utilizations, and they started moving things into a virtualized environment, so making themselves more agnostic to the hardware, becoming more and more close to the software defined or virtualized environment that can be controlled from any place of the world. So that is something I found phenomenal job done by that organization. And they just the only challenge that they had was to convince the management to give an approval to go ahead and perform the full interruption test. And with the confidence that the management had in the team, that actually allowed them to perform this testing and discover all those weak areas where they need to work extensively hard. That was my story. Prabh, over to you.
Yeah, see, as you guys have already discussed and covered the case studies of two different scenarios, where on the one side it is all about the technical aspect which Luke has discussed on the firewall, and on the other side the Prashant has discussed about the business requirement and all that. But guys, you have to agree with me, one of the most important thing which required in the entire continuity or disaster recovery is the analysis process. Okay, so there is a one book which is called as a Mind of Strategist. I don't know whether you heard about the book. It's the Art of Japanese Business. You can check that. So they, in that book, they talk about one statement called analysis is a critical starting point of a strategic thinking. So how many of you agree with that?
Yeah,
analysis
definitely.
is a critical starting point of a strategic thinking.
It's
right?
the only point. It's the only starting point. Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
So when we're talking about before doing due care, we need to have our due diligence, right? When we're talking about building a BCP, or before building a BCP, we really need to understand about the difference between the continuity and resiliency. Sorry to say that, but a lot of people have a different impression about continuity and resiliency. Continuity is all about the activities that you carry to continue the operation. But what about resiliency? Resiliency is all about the long-term goal, which change the business, which run the business according to the dynamic environment, which Luke has said about the load balancers, or it was like unexpected events where the Prashant talk about the COVID and all that, where it was a 10 days notice has been given for the business to shut down, or they can move work from house or work from home. Sorry. So all these things is basically required the critical thinking. So when we're talking about building a BCP plan, or when you're talking about the contingency plan, it is very important for us to understand it is my one year goal or it is my 5-year goal. Okay, so what is important to the organization in meeting its commitment, strategy, objectives? That is very important for us to understand. Let's take one example. Recently, one of my project where there is a company which is based out in US, and they have involved me for one of the project where they want a resilience plan for the ransomware attacks. Imagine ransomware attacks. Now you can imagine how things are getting shifted. We prepare the BCP for the availabilities from the disasters, earthquake, floods, interruption of hardware. But now the companies are moving to this level. They want the resilience program for the ransomware attack. Because you know very well, if the data got hacked or data get encrypted, we don't have a key and we cannot process the data. So things are getting changed. So they have a operations in US, they have an operation in India, they have an operation in Middle East, and they are very confused how to prioritize. So I told them, hold on, boss. You first let us know what is the list of business process, what is a vision, what is a mission, how this business process is basically aligned with the vision and mission. Let me know who are the business owners. Okay, let's understand what is important from a strategy point of view. Don't think about next 3 months plan. This is the biggest mistake security consultant does. They basically work on the shortcuts. Okay, there is a crisis. We need to work on the crisis and fix it off. No, that is not a resiliency plan. Resiliency plan is basically all about your 5-year plan. So what is important? Pen down. Why are these important? Pen down. In terms of the impact that would be felt if they were unavailable. When do our critical activities and their supporting infrastructure need to be available in order to avoid all the unacceptable impact? How do we ensure they are available when they need it? So first three questions will be answered by the bit of analysis. And that's something we do in a BIA. That is why, when we're talking about building a BCP plan and all that, BIE play a very important role. But the way the BI mentioned in CISSP, the way the BI mentioned in CISSP, it's completely different from doing a BI in the organization, where we identify the business units, identify the process. Okay, how critical is that? Now you are running a 5,000 process. How we can do BI again the 5,000 process? It's not possible. And we have to build a resilient plan in next 6 months for my 5-year plan. So identify which is generating a revenue, which is critical. That is how I did that. So I identify which business is very, very important for the organization. Then I did the risk assessment to identify the impact. And then I basically amend that particular part of my scope. One of the most important thing which we have this assumption about MTD, RT and all that, it is completely different from how the MTD, RT works in the organization. Here the MTD, RT is all about the SLA, right, Luke? Right, Prashant? Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's
By
all
end of the
time
day,
and money.
exactly. So MTD, RTO here is basically driven based on SLAs, reviews, contracts, and everything. And we prioritize. This is important. Now you let me know. Now SLA says 10 hours. My current infrastructure only support 2 hours. That is where we do the gap assessment. And that is how we basically update the BIA plan. Based on that, we create a recovery strategy. We submit the recovery strategy to the management. Like these are the list of 1,000 processes out of 5,000 I identify which is critical. And for that, this is the recovery strategy. Do let me know. Now, this is basically where the issue comes. They don't have a budget, but they don't want to lose this data, also lose these operations. So I convince them with their language only. I convey them, why it is important, how it is important, how it relates to the business. And that is how they create a plan. That is how they validate the plan. Now here, which Prashant has also said, and Luke, you also talk about the testing of the plan. Okay, so I really want to understand that the testing, which is basically mentioned in the books, is it really happen in the company, or it is completely different? Because I have a different impression about testing which is happening in the industry from what is mentioned in the book. Over to you guys.
That was incredible. Every time I talk to you guys, it's always the next level. Like after I talk to Prashant and Prabh, I feel like I have to now up my game because they're so professional. And every time I talk to them, it's just something new, and they just get smarter and smarter. I think they are secretly AI. I don't know if they really exist. They must be AI. I never thought of BIA that way in the way you said it, Prabh. Uh, the resiliency for planning and analysis for ransomware, no less. And you have to have that because ransomware automatically means you got to call the cops, you got to call the federales. The police are now involved. So to prepare for legal action, if you don't have these steps done, you're done. The cops are going to come in saying, "Give us all your information," and you can't be running around saying, "Oh, I don't know what to do," or "We had no plan for you guys." And with everything Prabh has said, without everything Prabh has said right now about his experience, his story, there would be no Prashant and Luke story. There would be no, we wouldn't have that because if we didn't do our own analysis, there would be no BCP DRP testing. There would be no pandemic testing. So thank you for that, Prabh. Very, very insightful.
And one more important thing when we coming to the testing part, when people write a plan, this is a point for everyone team who are listening to our podcast. When people write a plan, they think about the process or IT systems. Then write the plan so that they will understand what is explained and steps has been taken. But in this sense, the plan is a reflection of their experience. Okay. However, in a crisis, they may not be the same person. They may not be the person who will basically execute the functions. That is why when we're talking about testing of the plan, we do the testing to make sure the plan is accurate. The impression people have for the testing of the plan is to make sure we can train people. Not at all. We don't test the plan to train people. We test the plan to make sure everything, whatever mentioned in the plan is accurate. So tomorrow, Luke is basically heading the BCP team. He prepared the plan. He prepared the procedure. Okay, call Prashant, call Prabh during an emergency. But now what happened? Prabh and Prashant left the company and information still there in the DR plan. So in the case of crisis, they're calling Prabh and they're calling Prashant. Then Prashant and Prabh has left the company. That is the reason we test the plan. So writing a plan sometimes introduce a misleading, incorrect, or unnecessary step. But testing the plan will uncover all such errors. So make sure the plan have been, tested thoroughly, regularly, not because we have to train people on that, but to make sure the plan is working effectively. Now, what I have seen, Luke and Prashant, is the testing which is carried in the company was a standalone testing where the one person who authored the plan review, okay, or someone with a technical background, he will basically talk about the steps. Then there is a walkthrough testing we have, which involved mention the plan and about the conference roundtable in which they discuss. There's nothing called as a drill based integration. So we have a drill based testing where the people has to leave the facilities and all that. And we have an integration testing, which is not mentioned in any book. It occur when all the component of IT systems, when you're talking about database, middlewares and all that, they need to be recovered from a scratch and how to do that. Then tabletop exercise is there, which is already there in that, and then simulation. So when we doing this test, okay, the question is, I have seen people say test or exercise. So I want to clarify this. Test or exercise, both are different. Test basically implies whether pass or fail, where the exercise basically implies using something and is less threatening to participant. Trust me, people have always this assumption about testing and exercise. So test is all over whether pass or fail. Exercise is basically imply using something which is less threatening to the participant. We just combine this.
Nice. Prashant, did you have anything on Prabh's talk?
No, it was honestly, it was very close to what exactly is the real perception. This is what happens when people, when they read the books, they do give a holistic view of what is meant to, what is needed or what needs to be done, but every time it gets tailored down based on the business requirement. So and I don't blame people who write down the books, people who are authoring based on certain standards. They are giving us a best practice that could be generically adaptable in most of the situation, but that gets tailored down or customized based on the organization's requirement. I mean, that's where it leads to. Not everything which is mentioned everywhere I need to accustom each and everything in my environment. I just need to pick up the pieces which is more or closely relevant to my need, and that is where I'm going to pick it up. So no, I totally agree with what Prabh mentioned here.
And one more important thing I would like to add is, sorry to counter this word. So when we're talking about any test, my suggestion to everyone is create a good scenario. Okay, it must be realistic. Okay, it must be broad enough to encompass all the teams to test their groups. Okay, you should have a achievable final solutions, and make sure you should have a time stage functions. So because when you have such kind of a things, you can able to validate, okay, you can able to validate your plan which is working effectively. And even sometimes what happen, you can ask the program sponsor to approve the scenarios. I have seen in a lot of cases where the scenarios was not been approved and all that. So when you ask the program to sponsor this, to approve the scenario, use this exercise, so this will basically minimize the participant discussion during a presentation, and it also helps to avoid the scenarios that executive feels are too sensitive. So we need to have a clarity about that. That's another important thing. So I've also received a lot of queries regarding what kind of a teams we have. Then we have a business continuity manager. Okay, we have a sponsor, the one who basically review and approve the recovery plan. We also have a exercise reorder, which record the action region. In some companies, we call it as executive assistants. We also have exercise participants who basically prepare the test for reviewing the recovery plan. They are the one who participate the test and all that. And then we have a non-employees participants, where practical include people from the other organization who have a stake in your plan. So like police departments and other things, which is missing in the book. So we need to include sometimes these people, because that how you basically validate things. But my one more suggestion is that try to insert some humors into your tragic situation. For example, state that fire started by the lighting strike in the boss office, or the board or health condemn the food vending machine. So I'm just giving example. The reason why first of all that condition is very critical, and if you don't add the humor, the people will get exhausted and all that. So it is always always have a suggestion, add humors which make it more interactive. Now testing is also different type. We have a quarterly testing, we have an annually testing. Okay, so if you talk about the quarterly testing, where you verify the data backups, we verify disk, we inspect the safe and secure transmission of the media, we inspect how the offset storage work. And when you're talking about the annual, where we conduct the IT simulations, we conduct the work area recovery simulations, we conduct the pandemic tabletop exercise, we conduct the end-to-end BCP. Okay, so this is also another thing, is that what kind of a testing and how frequently we're doing a testing. Okay, so ultimate way is to validate the RTO, whether we can achieve within a defined MTD. That is what I've understood from the testing point of view.
And speaking of humor, I'd like to say that I'm thoroughly enjoying Prabh's recent Bollywood movie to auditor comparison all the time. Those have been cracking me up. Like, I don't understand most of the Hindi, but I do use Google Translate to understand, and it's been cracking me up. The ones with Amitabh Bachchan and all the other actors. Oh, I'm sorry, Amrish Puri, right? Those are cracking me up, because I've seen those movies when I was a kid. Now to see them in like a comparison to auditor oddity, it makes a lot of sense.
It is good to have. Otherwise, you will not.
Yeah.
I personally believe memes are the perfect way to learn a concept. Honestly, I mean, exactly. I'm a big fan of it, because when you have these hilarious technique, hilarious way to grasp a concept, it is with you for a very long time. It doesn't tend to leave from your brain.
Yeah, I woke up thinking about that for the talk today. I was like, oh, Providence. I checked my Instagram and LinkedIn to see which one was there, and they make sense. They nailed the point home, right? They really make sense. And Prashant, just real quick, I commend your management for doing that full interruption test. That's a very risky decision. It's a big decision. Whoever made that final decision they had a lot of stugats on them. They had a lot of bravery to do that, because you had to do a full interruption test. No company wants to do that. But the thing was, the whole world was fully interrupted. The whole world was experiencing a full interruption test. So you had no choice but to do the same thing. And doing those two things at the same time, you made for a powerful insight into what works in your company and what doesn't, in terms of bandwidth, amount of connections coming in on your VPN concentrator, is the routing properly. So great decision by your management on that one.
True. Yeah, I agree. And one thing is something that always has a profound thought, that whenever people, and I believe all of us spoke about the testing today, whenever we have these kind of a test, let's not create a scenario to make your test plan successful. That's the biggest mistake organizations do. They create a situation that their test would be successful. That's the biggest mistake. Make sure that you create a situation or a scenario 100%. That will lead you to failure, because that's what, if you're gonna assume that this is the test and it's gonna go successful, when the catastrophe strikes, that never knocks the door. It always surprises you with anything. So it's always proactively. It's very proactive approach that whenever you create a test scenario, make sure that you're setting yourself for the failure. That is when the reality comes in.
And I have seen this kind of a thing. Okay, make sure the plan should be work effectively. Make sure the plan. Why? We will always learn the lesson from failure instead of from success. Success is only giving you the appreciation. It will not give you any data.
I'd love to see a meeting where the bosses of the company are like, hey, we need to make sure this is successful. And then you have Prabh saying, why?
Exactly. So the way when we claim the risk cannot be eliminated.
Yeah. Only Prabh can do that.
No. How can I do that?
Only Prabh Nair can say something like that to management. Like, why? Why would we want it to be successful? And they'd be like, you know what? You're right.
No. See, no plan is always 100% accurate. I truly believe that. Okay, whether it's a software testing, software codes, or any plan, it cannot be accurate. Okay, it always have some area of improvements. No person is basically perfect, so we have to just find out those flaws and try to improve those things, because it's all about risk versus benefit. That is how I think works, what I understood in last 10 years.
Triumvirate, that was these Triumvirate Talks. I'm very proud of this first session, because what we say here, we are by no means organized. We're by no means perfect cybersecurity word at all. What we're doing now is laying the groundwork. We're guessing everything. We're trying things out. What we're doing now is laying the groundwork of what cybersecurity will be years from now, 100 years from now. They will listen to these talks. They will read about full interruption tests and what we did, and probably laugh about how amateur and how novice everything was, but they will respect the fact that we didn't know what we're doing, and we're learning on the go and making things happen. And 100 years from now, we will have built a stronger cybersecurity future. fellow triumvirates, that was excellent. Thank you so much for joining. To anybody listening, if you'd like to pick a topic for us to discuss as we apply to real life, and if we can do that, we will. Otherwise, we will make the call ourselves. Right, gentlemen?
Thank you.
It was, and thanks, Luke and Prashant for organizing that activity, and truly feeling, great honor to, sharing a stage with the people who get appreciate from the rest of the world for their documents, content, and all that. And I'm sure, this particular initiatives, what we have trying, which we're doing in a weekend or weekday, whatever, taking out the time from us, I'm sure it will definitely create a value, to the people who watching this podcast and all that. Listening to this podcast, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And for those who are listening to us, if just like what Luke said here, if you want us to cover a specific topic and you want us to give everyone, or probably have it out, because we are honestly, we're doing it for ourselves. I mean, this is something we just want to have fun out there. We three buddies around, and we just want to talk about it. But if you genuinely want us to talk about something which you read in books and you want to have a real world perspective around it, do let us know. Or just like what Lee mentioned, keep watching the space for more.
I am so proud to share this sector with you guys. I'm so proud to know you. Every time I talk to you guys, it's one of the best feelings. We stay busy in our lives and our jobs, but talking to you, it feels like I'm having a fun time.
Great. And before we winding up this particular session, I just want to share 3 points here. DRP and BCP both are different. BCP is a strategy and DR is for IT. Remember the team. Second most important thing, BIA is a critical component of the BCP, which is not true. BIA we do also for other activities. Okay. Third important point is, when we test the plan, our intention is not to make sure the plan should work effectively, but what is the errors, what is the things which make the plan ineffective? Learn from that particular failure and update the plan. And another important thing is educate planning with strategic thinking. That's the most important pillar of BCP.
Thank you, Prabh.
Correct.
That concludes Triumvirate Talks. Thank you, guys. See you in the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.